Here is your Radio Theater Channel weekly podcast for download. The RTC still has the very best old-time radio on the live streaming. And if it's music you love, tune in to the RTC Music Channel, where this link and many others are on our website at oldtimeradiolisten.com. Now, here's Jim.
Hello and welcome to the RTC Weekly Download. I'm your host, Jim Dolan. Today we're listening to an episode of the Mutual Radio Theater. This was recorded in 1980 and it's Our Man on Omega.
This is Andy Griffith. A crowd is gathering at a place of fields and rolling hills somewhere in Pennsylvania. On a platform which has been set up at the far end of the area are giant television screens, radar receivers, placed to sweep the heavens. In a moment, a man steps to a microphone. The crowd quiets expectantly. The man clears his throat, and he speaks.
Today, on the 52nd anniversary of Ned Bummer's exodus from Earth, we are gathered to pay our respects to the first man who positively established that we are coming and going at the same time. Long ago, before Ned Bummer, we believed the limiting factor in our exploration of the universe was the speed of light. It's hard to believe, I know, but we used to think of the speed of light was as fast as you could go. Imagine, 186,000 miles a second was it. Now, of course, it's whiz and away we go, darting through interstellar space, hither and yon to the very extremes of this little old universe of ours. Well, it was Ned Bummer who made that possible. It was Ned Bummer who made that first leap into the future, dragging the rest of us behind him. Ned Bummer, out there in the universe, ready to chat with us on this historic day.
And that's only the beginning of Ned Bummer's story.
Mutual Radio Theater, a new adventure in radio listening. 5 nights of exceptional entertainment every week, brought to you in Elliott Lewis's production of the Mutual Radio Theater. Our story, Our Man on Omega, by Elliott Lewis. Our star, Richard Crenna.
The speaker pauses to brush a tear from the corner of his eye as he remembers Ned Bummer, that great man who did so much for the human race. The crowd expectantly waits. Overhead, a clear sky is empty of activity.
Let me give you some background. Back in the 1980s at Green Bank, an experiment called Project Ozma 3 was set in motion. Very simply, what it did was send out a series of radio signals aimed in all sorts of directions to try and locate intelligent life on other planets. The signals were simple mathematical equations, so adroitly designed that any simpleton in the universe could deduce from them what our intelligent life on Earth was all about. 1 + 1 = 2, and so forth. According to the calculations then accepted, it would take 12 years for the message to get to the nearest possibly inhabited planet, and then a few days for the folks there to try to figure it out, and then 12 years for a reply. This, of course, was based on the premise that nothing travels faster than light. Since it would take 24 years, give or take a day or two, before an answer could be expected, although the machinery had been installed, it was not yet activated. Ned Bummer, as you know, was a computer repair and maintenance technician, and the computers up at Green Bank were his charges. The day Ned Bummer made his discovery was the greatest all-time day in the history of the universe. You recall, he was the first one who believed we were coming and going at the same time. Well, on this great all-time day that I'm talking about, Ned Bummer was at Green Bank. And what he was doing was connecting all that equipment that was scanning the universe, sending out signals. Because Ned Bummer didn't believe it would take 24 years for an answer. And sure enough, when the receiving equipment was connected, Ned Bummer became the first person in the history of planet Earth to hear the voice of someone from somewhere besides here. Ned very distinctly heard the voice of a feminine being. And this is what she said.
Hello, Earth. Hello, Earth. Hello, Earth. What is this, a joke? Do you want to talk to us, or is this a put-on?
Quick as a flash, Ned grabbed the microphone, and his voice replaced the pattern of signals. In perfect control, in that contained way of his, he spoke to a being from somewhere else.
This is planet Earth. This is planet Earth. Hi.
Well, at last. I've been saying hello, planet Earth, until my throat got sore. What's going on?
It's too complicated to explain. To whom am I speaking?
Norma K. Vicky. And you are?
Bummer. Ned Bummer, planet Earth.
I just knew it had to be Earth because of these wild messages we've been getting telling us 1 and 1 is 2 and 2 and 2 is 4 and so forth. That's some dumb, intelligent life you have over there.
Forgive us. Tell me, from where are you speaking?
The headquarters building.
No, I mean, I'm on Earth. Where are you?
Oh, I see what you mean. I'm on first. I think you call it Alpha Mega.
Alpha Omega?
First it's called. First up, first you go forward, first you go backward.
You mean you've been there and you're coming back?
Exactly. Forward and back, forward and back. You're going, I'm returning. Later on, you'll be returning. It's the natural order of things.
Am I on the right track when I deduce you speak English on Omega?
We speak all the Earth languages. We learned from listening to your radio and TV. We saw it and heard it before. And now that we're coming back, we're getting the reruns.
Television, you said. Did you have television?
Do we have television? You betcha. Why?
I thought, if you have the time, I thought I'd put a TV connector relay on this channel. And as we're talking, we could also see one another.
Well, that would be very nice.
Yes?
Well, we don't look like you, you know.
Oh, that's all right. Just give me a minute.
Ned Bummer hurriedly connected a small television receiver to the transmitting and receiving equipment. And then he leaned eagerly forward, prepared to be the first person on the planet Earth to see a being from somewhere else.
What a moment, huh? Ned Bummer sitting there in front of that television receiver, ready to get an Earth person's first look at someone from somewhere else. Now that's drama. While the sets were warming up, Ned engaged Norma K. Vicky in conversation.
By the way, is it Ms. Vicky or perhaps Miss Vicky or Mrs. Vicky?
None of the above. We gave that up.
Oh, of course.
And you? Since you're still going forward, is it Mr. Bummer or Mrs. Bummer?
Mr. Bummer.
Of course. Oh, my, is that you?
You see me?
I think it's you. Are you moving your right hand up and down?
Yes, I'm waving.
You're waving. My goodness, think of it. Waving.
How do I look? Is the picture sharp?
I could reach out and touch you with how real you look. You want to see me?
Oh, yes, I'd be honored.
I'm between channels 2 and 4.
Channel 3.
3? Here it would be 11.
Think of Ned Bummer's self-control at that moment. The slightest raise of an eyebrow, the tiniest gaping of the mouth, any outward sign of surprise would certainly be offensive to Norma K. Vicky and might indeed jeopardize Earth's relationship with other beings on other planets for all time to come. But let Ned Bummer describe it as he wrote it in his diary.
The instant Norma K. Vicky told me what channel she was on, I felt my stomach tense in anticipation. I literally froze my face into an appealing, warm, and friendly look so as not to betray my emotions when I first saw her. I leaned forward in my chair and switched to channel 3 and adjusted the focus until it was clear and sharp. What I saw was a being with little or no waist, her bust and hips squared off and of equal projection from her torso. Her arms and legs were perfectly matched lengthwise and were capable of being placed all 4 on the ground or raised in either alternate or catty-corner pairs. The upper third of her body was gently sloped, front to back, and within this area were Norma K. Vicky's eyes and her wide, generous mouth, which opened in an entrancing way without being sexy. Attached to her lower lip was what at first appeared to be a handle, although I quickly judged it to be an odor sensor. In fact, Norma K. Vicky was the exact duplicate of what we used to call a corner mailbox.
Well, what do you think? Are you surprised at how I look?
Not a bit. Not one little bit.
I told you we don't look like you know.
Well, as a matter of fact, you don't.
You noticed the difference?
Yes, I did.
Because you've seen some of us before?
Well...
You're the contact, right?
Contact?
Can you be trusted?
Absolutely.
Do you remember, before you and I had these conversations, when you folks were sending us those wild messages, 1 and 1 is 2 and so forth?
Oh, I remember it well.
When we received those messages, we were worried about you. I mean to say, there I was responding to your stupid messages, no offense to present company, and no one over there was responding to my response.
Yes. Yes?
We thought maybe you were sick or had destroyed yourself. So we sent an expeditionary force of 27 of our finest to see what was wrong.
You mean...
There are 27 omega sites among you there on Earth.
But where? What are they doing?
They're disguised. The last I heard, they were in your Des Moines, in New Iowa. They'd gotten hold of some red and blue and white coloring matter and disguised themselves. We haven't heard from them since they put on the disguise. Do you suppose they're lost? Did something terrible happen to them? Is it dangerous in your Des Moines, in Iowa?
Oh, I'm sure they're all right. You know how it is when you get to a new place. You go sightseeing, get caught up in the whirl of things, and sometimes you forget the folks at home.
Yes, I suppose so. I wonder,
Yes?
I hate to impose.
Oh, that's all right. Would you like me to round them up?
Would you?
Tell me, do they look like you?
Exactly like me, except they're disguised. Where I'm blue with a green cast, they're a combination of red, white, and blue.
I see. I believe I know where I might find them.
Would it be putting you out to ask them to get in touch?
No, not at all, not at all. Well, I'm going to have to sign off now if I'm to round up your fellow Omega sites. But I'll stay in touch.
Good luck.
What a task Ned Bummer had set for himself. He had promised to locate 27 Omega sites, who in their red, white, and blue disguises clearly duplicated the corner mailboxes, which used to be on nearly every corner throughout the U.S. of A. Norma K. Vicky had said they'd last been heard from in Des Moines, Iowa, and that's where Ned began his search. Ned proceeded with the utmost caution, lest the word get out that 27 corner mailboxes weren't corner mailboxes, but were indeed beings from another planet. Oh, what mob hysteria would have resulted. And so, proceeding with extreme caution, only when the coast was clear would Ned Bummer approach what seemed to be a corner mailbox, but which might be a lost Omega site, and address it thusly.
Hi there. I'm Ned Bummer. Norma K. Vicky sent me?
Good heart that he was. When he approached a corner mailbox into which someone had just stuffed a package, Ned would quickly say,
Forgive us. I'm sorry. We didn't know.
What a super humanitarian. And now, folks, we have a surprise for you. While I've been speaking, Hal, our engineer, has made contact with Alpha Omega. And at this moment, I would like to call in Ned Bummer himself to comment on his 8-month search for the missing Omega sites. Hello, Ned Bummer! Hello, Ned Bummer! Can you hear us?
I can hear you, sir. You're coming in loud and strong.
Ned, there are hundreds of thousands of people gathered here today to celebrate your accomplishments. Your wife, Mrs. Ned Bummer, is an honored guest.
Oh, hello, old girl. We'll be together soon.
She's overcome with emotion, Ned, and unable to speak. But she's waving at you, Ned. She's waving at the speaker your voice is coming from.
I'm waving back, old girl.
Ned, I was telling the folks about your search for the missing Omega sites. Would you care to comment?
Thank you. That search was one of the most difficult periods of my life, sir, as you can imagine. My concern for the missing Omega sites was enormous, since they were alone and friendless on an alien planet disguised as corner mailboxes.
Ned, there are people here in this crowd who are openly weeping.
As well they might, sir. For those Omega sites were living in secrecy on street corners without a roof over their heads. I made my first contact on the outskirts of Des Moines, Iowa, near a railroad station. There I discovered Seymour Y. Kenley, a strapping young omegacite so terrified by his surroundings that at first he was unable to speak to me. Only when I placed my arm around his broad back did he break down and sob. With Seymour Y. Kenley by my side, we traversed this great nation of ours in search of the other omegacites. Oh, their condition was pitiful. Arnold V. Deems was located outside the New York Times mailroom and suffers a hernia to this day.
How badly we behaved toward our first visitors from another planet.
Oh, but it wasn't malicious, sir. None of it was malicious. Excuse me, sir. Yes, of course, immediately. Now I must get back to work. But before I leave, let me say one other thing. I think we all find, as we get younger, how many foolish things we did in our old age. It has been truly said that old age is wasted on the elderly. Good wishes to you all until we meet again 3 or 4 years ago. Take care, old lady. Take care, my precious.
Mrs. Bummer is waving, Ned. She's sobbing and waving.
We'll be together soon, old girl, and we'll have our honeymoon.
What a great person. How modestly he glossed over that 8-month period. Not a word about his difficulties with the postal authorities and the police. Not a syllable about the week he spent in the intensive care unit of the West Cleveland Hospital for the Deranged. He did not mention the night that he and Seymour Y. Kenley found Arthur L. Flem standing on a New York street alongside Santa Claus. And glued to his neck, that terrible piece of paper, its invitation to Mayhem, clearly printed, "Mail early for Christmas." Before anyone could stop him, Ned Bummer, driving a newly requisitioned X-moving van, pulled to the curb, lifted Arthur L. Flem from the sidewalk, and as Santa Claus shouted, "Stop! Stop!" Ned Bummer drove quickly away with Santa Claus and a Salvation Army lassie in hot pursuit. And Lawrence W. Neek was found outside a soap company's headquarters, where he was being stuffed with bubble bath samples. And Norman R. Zolli, the leader of the expedition, was found outside the Foundation for Planned Parenthood, stuffed with brochures, which accounts for the minor population explosion of that year. Now, it was Ned Bummer's intent, when he'd gathered together all the Omega-sites, to drive his converted moving van, in which the 27 Omega-sites were being transported, to Green Bank, where he planned to let them broadcast on television to Norma K. Vicky on Omega. During his task of rounding up the Omega-sites, he regularly sent postcards to his bride-to-be, Miss Eleanor Hempel, whom you all know. Let's hear it for the little lady, Eleanor Hempel, now Mrs. Ned Bummer. Take a bow, Mrs. Bummer, that's it. You there, give her a hand, help her up, but don't let her totter. That's it. All right, thank you. These postcards Ned mailed always showed a corner mailbox, since Ned Bummer wanted to hint to his beloved as to what he was doing. Now he wanted to see her in person, so he made a little bit of a detour on his way to Green Bank to pay a visit to Miss Hempel.
Just wait here for a moment.
You've given up dreaming about going forward and back and taken a position with the post office. Oh, my darling.
Post office?
Now we can be married. We don't have to postpone our wedding another minute. Oh, my darling Ned.
But I'm not with the post office.
You're not?
No.
I noticed immediately that a corner mailbox was clearly in view in each picture postcard you sent me, and so I thought
Those aren't mailboxes. Those are my friends.
Who are?
What looks like mailboxes. They're not.
They're not mailboxes?
They're omega-sites.
The mailboxes are omega-sites? Ned, darling, I'm afraid I'm slow-witted today.
May I bring my friends into your house?
Of course, my darling.
Gentlemen, my fiancée, Miss Eleanor Hempel, who lives in that little white house with the picket fence, would like you to come in for a little visit.
We'd be honored.
My dear, may I present my friends, the Omegasites. They're from the planet Omega.
How do you do? How kind of you to receive us.
How do? I'd like to tell you that any friend of Ned's is a friend of mine. Won't you come in?
Now, at that time, a group of volunteers had formed in the U.S. of A. who called themselves the Patriots to Keep the Mails Clean. The PKMC encouraged self-righteous acts of vigilance on the part of its members, who were dedicated to removing from the mails any material they considered decadent, salacious, or obscenely offensive. Their most prominent enemy were those who mailed things in plain brown wrappers. The PKMC would confiscate such material and burn it, tearing open corner mailboxes in order to do this. They would then leave the mailboxes in empty fields for the postal officials to find and repair. Well, you might not believe this, but in one of those chance encounters that often changes the shape of history, Felden Bark, the executive secretary and guiding light of the PKMC, just happened to be driving past Miss Eleanor Hempel's little house at the moment she was greeting the Omegasites who stood on her front porch. Felden Bark immediately surmised that a giant, plain brown wrapper pornographic mailing was about to take place, and it was just as if an act of war had been declared. He flicked on his CB radio.
Mayday! 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 This is Clean Daddy. All members of PKMC, this is war!
Well, can you imagine? 27 Omegasites being welcomed to planet Earth by Miss Eleanor Hempel on the front porch of her little home with the picket fence. And just when it seems everything's fine, Felden Bark sees them, thinks they're mailboxes, and in effect declares war. I mean.
Think of it, ladies and gentlemen. Think of it. Later on, Felden Bark was asked what exactly had happened. And this is what he said.
Now, whatever I did was done to protect all our people, young and old alike, from the dirty dangers which lie inside plain brown wrappers. Now, in my view, if a man hasn't the guts to put a return address on his mail, he deserves whatever happens to him. I ask this court to reverse its judgment, since all I did was try to make certain that certain vile people who were using the fine United States mail for the purpose of seducing the American people, young and old alike, would not do so anymore.
Well, that gives you an idea of the sort of man Felden Bark was. You recall what he did when he saw the Omegasites.
Mayday! Mayday! This is Clean Daddy. Now hear this. An unidentified moving van, license number C00784, this state, bearing on either side signs reading, "Curb Your Dog," is preparing to load 50 to 100 mailboxes, each crammed to the gunwales with filthy plain brown wrappers. This moving van must be stopped. Repeat, this moving van must be stopped. This is Clean Daddy, over.
One by one, each member of the Patriots to Keep the Mails Clean responded. Since Felden Bark, in his excitement, had neglected to give his location, it took a little bit of time before the members of the PKMC reconnoitered. And by then, Ned Bummer had reloaded the Omegasites, and they were on their way up to Green Bank. The expedition's leader, Norman R. Zolli, sat up front with Ned Bummer, while the other Omegasites gathered in the back of the van.
Miss Hempel is a charming young lady.
Oh, thank you. She's agreed to be my wife.
Oh, how nice. Where are we going?
You'll see. I have a surprise for you.
Will it hurt?
No, of course not. Those times are over. And I must apologize for the way you and your cohorts were mistreated.
Yes. Well, where are we now?
This is a place where I spent many happy hours when I was a child. Very often here on Earth, when the pressure builds up, a man needs a place to be alone. In my particular line of work, which is the maintenance and repair of computers, those pressures often become intolerable. This restful haven has saved me more than I can say.
What did you do here?
I recharge my batteries.
Here?
Oh, I don't mean that literally, of course.
Oh, of course. Don't look. Don't look.
That was the first time Ned Bummer heard that high, whining sound with which we've become so familiar. On hearing it today, a child will look up and wave pleasantly to the driver, who will wave back. Today, it's a common occurrence when these little scooters, as we call them, dash in and out of our atmosphere, darting and spinning, their eye lights flashing on and off. But in the old days, in the time of Ned Bummer's discoveries, these were frightening things for people to see. If you saw a flying saucer, as they were then called, you reported it to an Air Force headquarters, where it was filed. That's what Ned Bummer saw at that moment. A small group of scooters, their red, blue, and yellow lights flickering on and off. As though they'd seen Ned and the Omega sites, they hovered above them, mother-heading them, so to speak.
Keep your hands in your pockets. Don't speak. Don't look at them. And don't point.
Yes, right.
We're just fine, thank you. No cause for alarm. Not at all.
Ned Bummer wrote of that experience just after it occurred, and I quote, "Seen from directly below, each object formed a circle a bit longer than it was wide. Its underparts were covered by a substance resembling metallic fur. The lights were not flashing on and off, but were opening and closing, as though they were eyes, one blue, one red, and the third yellow."
Our treatment has been just splendid. Nothing to cause any concern has happened to us. This gentleman beside me is Ned Bummer, and he's largely responsible for our safety and our feelings of trust and confidence.
May I take my hands out of my pockets now?
Oh, yes, of course. I didn't know if you'd ever met a scooter before. We don't like to take chances. Under stress, the driver has difficulty controlling it. You Earth people, you're always pointing at things. It terrifies the scooters. Every one of you pointing at them all the time.
I must confess we've treated them very badly, pointing and so on.
Yes, you have. After all, they're only doing what they've been assigned to do.
They guard you, is that it?
Well, they make certain we're all right. They had our eyes on us before you found us. They knew exactly where we were.
But Norma K. Vicky told me you were lost.
Norma K. Vicky is a worrywart. She assumed we were lost because she didn't know where we were. We knew where we were, so we weren't lost. We didn't know where each other were, was the problem.
Yes, I see. Well, I think it's time to continue our journey. Shall we get back in the van?
The 27 Omega sites clambered back into the van, and they continued their journey to Green Bank. Ned Bummer felt perfectly safe, for he knew the members of the day crew were finished and had left the complex. And sure enough, the great Green Bank parking lot was entirely empty. As he parked the van, Ned realized that the scooters were hovering above them, eye lights blinking watchfully. But what Ned Bummer didn't know was that Feldon Bark and his men had picked up the trail and were right behind them. But let us hear the recorded testimony of Lieutenant General Cyrus Miller. General Miller, poor soul, is the only one who's left us any inkling of what has come to be known as the affair in the Green Bank parking lot. This tape was recorded at General Miller's court-martial. Roll tape, Hal.
I say it again, gentlemen. It was a war in which corner mailboxes tried to swallow men with plain brown wrappers flying from the radio antennas of their automobiles, while several flying saucers hovered directly over the field, perhaps acting as airborne observers. I witnessed the battle from my office. The northernmost window looks down on the parking lot where the war was fought. Believe me, gentlemen, it was a war in which corner mailboxes tried to swallow men with plain brown wrappers flying from their radio antennas.
Poor soul died in disgrace, penniless and unloved. A tragic footnote in history. And now Hal has Ned Bummer ready to speak to us again. Come in, Ned Bummer. Come in, Ned Bummer.
Ned Bummer here. Hello, Earth.
I note a change in your voice, Ned.
Well, sir, as we go backward, we pick up speed. By Earth reckoning, I'm now just past my 10th birthday. However, I am determined to finish this work before my 9th birthday, which will be sometime last week by your reckoning.
Mrs. Bummer is waving, Ned.
Hang in there, old girl. While it's true that you're 75 going on 76, while I'm 10 going on 9, we'll work it out. You'll see. Just hang in there for your Ned. We'll have our honeymoon yet.
She's waving, Ned. And I think a teardrop or two has fallen. A hand, folks, for Ned Bummer. Thank you, Ned. Thank you. And now, in a moment, the exciting conclusion to what happened to Ned Bummer and Feldenbach and the Omega sites.
Andy Griffith again, and here's the fourth act of Our Man on Omega.
Well, as you've heard, Feldenbach and his cohorts left the Green Bay parking lot with their tails between their legs. Ned led the Omega sites into the building and was about to put them on television so that Norma K. Vicky could see that they were alive and well, when Lieutenant General Miller interjected his presence.
Red alert! Red alert! Invasion of foreign forces from somewhere else! Man the tanks! Armored cars! Get your weapons! Charge!
Ned and the Omega sites could do nothing but run for their very lives. They escaped the building, piled pell-mell into the van, and roared away. Ahead of them, Feldenbach and his cohorts frantically drove, while behind them came a portion of the United States Army.
The scooters are following us. Mr. Bummer?
Yes?
We'd be honored if you'd come with us and meet the folks in Omega and elsewhere in the universe. We desperately need new blood.
I'm to be married very soon.
Oh, we wouldn't stand in your way.
May I consider your offer?
Please do. It's our opinion the new blood you'd add would revive and refresh Omega.
You're very kind.
Oh, not at all.
By a clever ruse, Ned Bummer escaped the slow-moving United States Army and drove directly to Miss Eleanor Hempel's little white house. And there, with only the Omega sites in attendance, they were married by a civil servant sworn to secrecy. While this was going on, Feldenbach called a meeting of the PKMC, and this is a transcription of what he said.
Mr. Chairman, fellow members of the PKMC, I want to first thank each and every one of you for dropping whatever you were doing to attend this emergency meeting. Now listen good. A gigantic plot to flood the mails of the United States of America with plain brown wrappers has been uncovered by yours truly and a few associates. Now, what these foul people who instigated this plot have done is rig these mailboxes, we counted 27 of them, so that they're self-propelled and they bite. I can tell that many of you gathered here at this special meeting are saying to yourselves that old Felon has flipped his lid, etc. Not so, my friends. Those mailboxes bite. They bit Thomas Buddy Green on his right forearm so hard they made a dent in his favorite leather jacket, which can never be eradicated. Therefore, we are going after them. And if you're threatened, fight fire with fire. Bite back. In order for you to do that, I want every man here who has a bridge or false teeth to step out of line and deposit said items on the table over there. All right, now, let's get those dirty, filthy, plain brown wrapper deviants. Yeah!
Feldenbach led his men back to the spot where he'd first seen the Omega sites, Miss Eleanor Hempel's little white house. And they got there just as the wedding party was breaking up. Imagine, as Feldenbach rounded the corner, the front door opened and out stepped the Omega sites.
Mayday! Mayday! Clean Daddy here.
My goodness, what's going on?
They don't drive very well.
Look, the scooters.
They're warning us. Look there.
Ned, dear, those are army tanks coming this way.
We must leave now, immediately. There is no time to lose.
It was a scene from Bedlam. The army approaching from one direction, Feldenbach and his men from another, while the scooters hovered above it all, eyelights blinking in a frenzy.
The scooters will land and take us aboard now. Mr. Bummer, you will ride with Spot. I will join Rover. Prince and Fido will stay here to guard Mrs. Bummer.
But
There's a good girl.
But
You've been a brick, Mrs. Bummer. I knew you'd understand.
I'll be back, my darling. I'll be back. Be a good little girl. I'll be back and we'll have our honeymoon.
Now, just a block away from where Miss Eleanor Hempel lived was a small branch post office. And outside it, and on the 4 street corners adjoining it, stood corner mailboxes. What happened then, to the shame of many, was that Feldenbach's men, eager for battle, their teeth safely left behind, attacked these mailboxes, while the Omega sites boarded the scooters, Spot and Rover and Lady and the others.
Goodbye, old girl. It's only a little business trip. I'll be back before you know it, and we'll have our honeymoon.
Bite them! Don't just stand there. I say bite them!
Charge! Men, escort this young lady to a home, since she appears to be having trouble with a moving van. Then arrest those men for attempting to deface United States government mailboxes by biting with their teeth and gums.
And that's exactly what happened. Ned, can you hear me? Miss Hempel is beside me now, and we've a treat in store for you. And now, Mrs. Ned Bummer would like to say a word. Ladies and gentlemen, Mrs. Ned Bummer.
Thank you, sir. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. If my husband, Ned Bummer, were standing here by my side, he would know how to thank you properly. Alas, I was never one to make public speeches the way Mr. Bummer did.
Now Hal has been trying to reach Ned Bummer for our big surprise. Ned, can you hear me? Is that you, Ned?
This is Norman R. Zolly, Earth.
Oh, Mr. Zolly. Good evening, sir. Is Ned Bummer available? His wife is here with us at this grand celebration we're having in honor of Ned.
Oh, well, he's taking his nap just now, sir, and he's cranky if awakened.
Are we talking about Ned Bummer, sir?
Yes. He refused our advice and continued work until he reached the infant stage.
But, sir, Mrs. Bummer is here, and this sweet little old lady has been waiting 52 years for her honeymoon.
Oh, well, don't concern yourself, Mrs. Bummer. We're going to reverse ourselves within the hour and go forward again.
With this little setback won't disturb anything, will it?
Not at all. By my calculations, the scooters have arrived to escort Mrs. Bummer to her husband. It will first take her to a backward-moving planet.
You mean...
Exactly, sir. Ned Bummer will grow older while Mrs. Bummer grows younger. And when they've each reached the Earth age on the day of Ned's departure, they'll be joined together and have their honeymoon as planned, just as though those Earth years had never occurred.
Thank you, Mr. Zolly. Mrs. Bummer has been getting into the scooter, even as we spoke. Farewell, dear lady. Farewell. Our thoughts go with you.
The Mutual Radio Theater is brought to you 5 nights a week at this time. Tonight's original radio play, Our Man on Omega, was written, produced, and directed by Elliott Lewis. Your host was Andy Griffith. Our star was Richard Crenna. Featured in the cast were Linda K. Henning, Jesse White, Sandra Gould, Lou Horn, William Woodson, and Brian Miller. The Mutual Radio Theater theme was composed by Nelson Riddle. John Harlan speaking. The Elliott Lewis production of Mutual Radio Theater is a presentation of CVI.
This is Vincent Price. Join us tomorrow. I'll have another story to astonish and mystify you.
Now we'll wrap up this week's program with Nightmare from the Molle Mystery Theater. This is from 1944.
Good evening. This is Peter Lorre. Hey, did you ever have a nightmare? Did you ever go through a horrible experience that seemed very real? Yes, sometimes reality and unreality seems one, and you're not so sure anymore, like the fellow tonight in a mystery playhouse. Yes, tonight we are going to have a nightmare. That is, we are going to hear about somebody else, which is almost as bad. This gentleman had a particularly realistic one. In fact, he didn't know for the life of him whether or not it really happened. But you listen for yourself to the unfolding of William Irish's strange and intriguing story of a man who dreamed he committed murder and woke up to the fact that maybe he actually had. Listen to Nightmare.
Dodge, Homicide Division.
Cliff, this is Vince.
Oh, hello, kid. What's on your mind?
Cliff, I've got to see you now, as soon as possible.
Look, kid, I'm working. What's so important you can't tell it on the phone?
Cliff, I think I killed a man last night. I don't know whether I dreamed it or it actually happened. That's why I've got to see you.
You killed somebody? I can't believe it. Not you, Vince. Well, listen, meet me in the office in 15 minutes. Whatever you do, don't tell anybody else about this. Go ahead, Vince. Tell me some more about this dream of yours.
Well, after that, Cliff, all I remember is the white face. The face of a woman. Beautiful, but false somehow. You see, we were in a room with nothing but doors. 8 doors, frame to frame, with no wall space between. Well, I opened one of the doors, and suddenly someone rushed at me. We struggled, and he forced me to the floor. As we fought, he said to the woman, "Hand me that knife." Well, I raised my hand to defend myself, and suddenly I felt the handle of something. I realized the woman had put the knife into my hand by mistake. And then
Then you stabbed him.
Yeah. And I stabbed him. Well, after that, the woman disappeared, and I felt I had to hide the body. Well, behind one of the 8 doors, there was a closet. I propped the body inside, and I locked the door. Then I went out of the house. That's horrible. I can't get it out of my mind.
But what makes you think any of this actually happened? It's an unpleasant dream, sure, but it's not unusual. Lots of people dream they kill someone.
But when you dream, do you wake up with big scratches on your wrist like this one?
What are you asking me to believe? You got up in your sleep and you killed somebody? That scratch on your wrist proves nothing.
I admit that, but then when I got out of bed this morning, Here, I found this button.
Now, wait a minute. You're not going to tell me that button came off in your hand while you were wrestling with that guy in the dream.
That's the way it happened.
That I refuse to believe. It came off your shirt.
I could never afford pearl buttons. You know that. Not real pearl.
Now, listen to me, Vince. I don't want to hear any more of this. If I weren't your brother-in-law, I'd lock you up and call a psychiatrist.
How do you think all this makes me feel? Cliff, if it wasn't for the key, I could forget the whole thing.
Key? What key? I suppose it's something else from your dream. Now, stop it, Vince. I don't want to hear any more.
That's right. Go ahead. Get sore. But no matter how angry you get, it doesn't destroy the reality of this key. Look at it. You never see a key like this these days. It's fretted. It's full of scroll work made of brass, old-fashioned, but nevertheless real. And in the dream, if it was a dream, that's the key I used to lock the body in the closet. What's there left to think? Only this. There's somewhere there's a door that this key belongs to. And behind that door, there's a dead man, and I don't know where. My Lord, I don't know where. Or who he is, nor how and why it happened.
Now, look, kid. It's just one of those cockeyed dreams that happen to people, that's all. But if it'll make you feel any better, you can go in the teletype room and watch the reports, Vince. Every crime committed in this state is reported on those machines. Maybe you can identify yourself with some criminal and get this thing off your chest. I'll join you later. Have a Haven't you given up yet?
Don't be funny, Cliff. There's one here that's possible. A stabbing in a town called Clarksburg.
Clarksburg?
Yeah.
There's no transportation up there. You never did learn how to drive a car. You'd really need supernatural aid to kill somebody up there.
Now, wait a minute, Cliff. Here's some more coming in on that stabbing in Clarksburg. It's a description.
Killer, 5'9", weight 150, brown hair, wearing a yellow and green sweater under a brown suit. Hey, Vince, you wear a yellow and green sweater, don't you?
Don't be coy. You gave me that sweater for Christmas.
Maybe it's only a coincidence, but you're about 5'9", weigh about 150. That couldn't possibly have been you, Vince.
Who are you talking for, yourself? I know I found that key and the button in the pocket of my brown suit. You're not kidding anybody. You want to know just as much as I do. Come on, let's get started for Clarksburg.
Lousy rain. Must be a cloudburst.
I can't see a thing. This windshield wiper's broken. Cliff, do you know where we are?
We've been lost for the past 5 minutes. I don't even remember how we got on this road.
Well, I'm going to roll down the window. Getting wet's better than crashing into something. Hey, Cliff.
Yeah?
Take the next road to the left. That'll get us to Clarksburg.
How do you know it'll get us to Clarksburg? I thought you said you'd never been out this way before.
Well, I don't know how I know. All of a sudden, everything looks familiar to me, as if I'd been over this same road before. I just know you've got to turn left at the next road. Stop here, Cliff, stop here!
Hey, what's the big idea? You're trying to kill somebody, grabbing the brake that way?
That house, Cliff. There with the big porch. That's the house with the 8-room door.
How do you know that's the house? Thought you said you'd never been out here before.
I've never been here before in my life. Unless
it happened in your dream, is that it? Well, I think this is all crazy. We'll soon know for sure. Come on. We're going in and see whether there's an 8-doored room or not.
Funny, the front door wasn't locked, Cliff.
Never mind that. How do you know the 8-doored room is upstairs?
I just know, that's all. Cliff, I think it's this room right here. This is it. This is the place, all right. Count them. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
8 doors. Where's that key?
It's right here in my pocket. Now, you'll have to get it out. I can't. My hands are all wet, perspiration.
Stop acting like a baby. You're sweating all over. There's the key. Now, which door?
That one, I think. There's nothing there.
Not now, there isn't. But there was something there.
What?
Look. There's blood on the wall.
Oh, Lord. Now, do you believe me? Now do you understand that I wasn't joking when I told you about my dreams?
Sure, I believe you. I believe you dreamed you killed somebody and stuffed them in the closet there. I believe you never saw this place before. That you intuitively knew which road to take and which house to come to. What do you take me for, a dope?
I wasn't lying to you, Cliff. Honest, I wasn't lying.
You came to me for help, didn't you? But you didn't have guts enough to come clean to say, Cliff, I went out to a place last night and killed a guy for such and such a reason. No, you cook up a dream trying to take advantage of me because I'm married to your sister.
No, Cliff.
Abusing my gullibility because I like you. Making a fool out of me.
Cliff, I wasn't lying to you. Everything happened just as I told you it did. How I happen to know this house was here, I don't remember. You've got to believe me.
Shut up.
Cliff.
The dream's over now and baby's awake. You're going to start all over from scratch, you and me. I'm going to get the facts out of you.
Please, Cliff, let go of my shoulder. You're hurting me.
What were you doing here last night?
I never was here before. I never saw it until I came here with
Don't
you.
lie. Every time you lie, you're going to get something like this.
Please, Cliff, I'm half crazy already without you beating me.
Who was the guy you did it to? What was his name?
I tell you, I don't know. I don't know.
Are you going to answer me, Vince?
I can't. You're asking me things I can't answer.
Who was the guy? Why did you kill him? I've handled close-mouthed guys before. You're going to tell me if I have to slap it out of you. Right in this spot where you killed somebody else.
Cliff, please don't hit me again.
What was that?
It sounded like a door slam.
Then there's somebody else in this house. Which door did we come in?
I don't know. One of the 8.
All right, you guys, I've got you covered. Back up against that door there. One false move and I'll drop you.
Haven't you found what you're looking for yet?
Yeah, I guess I've seen enough. This stuff in your wallet identifies you. Cliff Dodge, Homicide Division. Why didn't you say you're a detective?
It's nobody's business.
Okay. Wagner's my name. I'm the sheriff around here. When I see people monkeying around a house where a murder's just been committed...
Murder? You found the body?
Yeah. As a matter of fact, there were 2 murders. A man was killed and stuffed in that closet over there. We found the other body outside. A woman. Wasn't dead when she was found, but she was dying. Run over by a car. Deliberately. The car was run back and forth over her body. She said a few things before she died. Told us all about the other body in the closet. And gave us a pretty good description of the killer.
She said the same person murdered the man in the closet and deliberately ran over her body with a car?
No, but what else is there to conclude? Poor Mrs. Fleming. She owned this house, expected her husband home from South America tonight. She was a flirt, but even so, a very charming woman.
You don't happen to have a picture of this woman, this Mrs. Fleming, do you?
There's one in the next room. That door behind you.
Open the door, Vince.
I can't, Cliff, I can't.
Open the door.
Please, Cliff.
Open the door.
That's her, that big picture on the left. Pretty, wasn't she?
Cliff, that's her.
Well, now what's the matter with him?
He's fainted. Can't stand the sight of people who've been murdered, even if it's only a picture. Give me a hand with him, will you? Do you feel any better, kid?
Yeah, I feel all right. Cliff, that picture, it was the same woman. The woman from the dream.
Also, the woman who was run over and over with an automobile.
But I can't drive, Cliff. You know I can't drive.
Yeah, if it hadn't been for that, I'd have turned you over to Wagner for murder.
Did the sheriff leave?
Yeah, he left. But I still don't believe that stuff about a dream. Are you sure you didn't leave something out, some small detail?
No. I told you everything, Cliff. I was tired. I went to bed early. I fell asleep. That is right after Mr. Berg closed my door.
Berg? You didn't mention any Mr. Berg before.
Well, he moved into our rooming house about a month ago.
Why did he come into your room?
Well, the lights went on a blink. I remember he was carrying a candle.
How was Berg holding that candle?
Oh, the flame was right in front of his eyes. I remember staring at it. I was very tired, Cliff. I don't remember everything.
And Berg, he said you're very tired, didn't he?
Yeah. Yeah, now that you mention it, he did say that.
Good. Now, have you ever seen this picture?
No. No, but the man looks familiar. Say, that looks like Berg. I never saw him so well dressed, but that's Berg, all right.
I found this picture in this room.
Here? In this room? You found Berg's... What are you driving at?
Sense, reason, logic, sanity. The man you identify as Berg also happens to be Mr. Fleming, the husband of the woman who was killed last night.
Berg is Fleming and Fleming is Berg? Now I'm really going out of my mind.
It's simple to a flatfoot. I figure that Fleming pretended he went to South America. He took a room in your rooming house under the name of Berg. And tonight he's pretending to return from South America. At least Wagner said he's expected.
And last night Fleming came back here and murdered his wife? But who killed the other one? The man?
You did. But you didn't know you were doing it.
Oh, I did kill someone after all. I am a murderer. I still don't understand how it happened.
All right, kid, relax. Because we're going to find out tonight.
Find out?
Right. Now, if Fleming comes home, as his wife expected him to do, you're going to be waiting in this room for him. Waiting with a gun.
That won't do any good.
Hey, we might after you've learned a few answers. Now, I'm going to tell you exactly what to say to Fleming, word for word. You might not understand, but you're going to memorize the things I tell you to say, word for word.
Memorize?
Yeah, because your life depends on it.
Cliff, you're not going to leave me here alone, are you, Cliff?
There'll be nothing I can do to help you, kid. If everything goes right, you'll come out of this scot-free. If anything goes wrong, that's the end. Now, Fleming will probably come up those stairs at the far end of the hall. So you'd better stand over here. The first thing to remember, let him speak first.
did you get here?
You showed me the way, didn't you?
You remembered coming here? You're lying. Who brought you here? Who came with you?
Just this gun.
That's impossible. You had the look, the typical look. And why did you do everything you were told to do?
I wanted to see where it was all leading. I thought there might be some good in it for me later.
You purposely pretended? You mean you went ahead and consciously killed?
I figured you'd pay off heavy afterwards to keep me quiet. I found your wife and her lover just as you said I would. It was easy.
I should have known my control wasn't perfect when I saw my wife come running out of the house. She saw my car, came toward me. I waited, then gave it the gas.
I killed the man and you killed your wife. You wanted them both dead, didn't you?
Yes, but I didn't want to have to kill her myself. I loved her, but I hated her. She said I was too old for her.
That's what I wanted to hear. What? That's it, to hear you convict yourself. What did you... I was lying to you. Your control was perfect. You hypnotized me easily. I guess I got a weak will or something.
Well, then what did you...
I was lying to you. I was hypnotized, all right. I happened to see your picture here in the house. I recognized you as Berg. And now I can't clear myself before the law ever. And you're going to pay for doing that to me now.
Now, wait a minute. Don't do that. Don't shoot. Now, look. Here, I have a watch. See it? Solid gold inset with diamonds and rubies. It's worth $20,000. It's yours if you'll let me go.
Stop dangling it that way. What are you trying to do?
Now, listen to me. Give me another minute. A minute by the watch.
Stay where you are. Now, don't move.
You don't want to shoot, do you, my friend? You wouldn't want to smash this beautiful, lustrous watch? A golden, shining little timepiece? You can't take your eyes from it, can you?
Please, don't. Take it away. Shining in my eyes.
But you love it. You're fascinated by it, aren't you? And now you're tired. You're very tired. And that gun is much too heavy for you to hold. Just drop the gun to the floor. And it won't be so heavy anymore.
Just drop the gun. Drop gun.
My control is perfect. Here, take this notebook and this pencil.
Take notebook, pencil.
Write as I dictate. I am wanted for the murder of 2 people at the Fleming house.
I wanted the murder of 2 people at Fleming house.
They are bound to get me, so I take this way out.
They are bound to get me. Take way out.
Sign your name. There. Now give me the notebook and the pencil. Now pick up your gun again. Hurry. That's it. Now put the barrel of the gun in your mouth. Put the barrel of the gun in your mouth! Good. Now pull the trigger. Pull the trigger.
How is he, Sheriff?
He's dead.
We just made it in time. I didn't think he'd try anything like that. Vince. Vince. Come out of it, boy.
I'm all right. It's just that everything's hazy.
Fleming really threw a trance on you. You were just going to blow your own head off when I plugged Fleming. Had to. Only way I could break the spell in time to save you.
You shot Fleming? Cliff, did I do it all right? Did I do everything you told me to do all right?
Perfect. I had a hunch it was hypnosis the minute you told me about the candle. But how was I going to prove it? Only by having you come up against Fleming. That's why I left you here. Wagner and I were in the basement with a dictaphone. We put a microphone in the ventilator. I didn't want to make you nervous. That's why I didn't tell you about it.
Then I'm free? I won't be tried for murder?
Not around here, you won't. I'm sheriff here. This crime is solved.
Oh, thank heaven for that. I don't think I could go through a court trial. One nightmare in a lifetime is enough.
That, my friends, was Nightmare. Tonight's performance in a mystery playhouse. And now, for heaven's sake, let's get off that nightmare. Let's walk down to the green room, huh? For a gander at what sweetness and light is in store for you next time. Always sweet, always light. You know it. Our play is rehearsing, dear, so follow me, please. Come. Come, come. It had been hard to convince Anne at first. Easy enough for me to say, we have to get rid of Ole. But Ole was Anna's brother. We talked it over on the cliff near the land. We have to, Anna. We have to go through with it.
Oh, Richard, there must be some other way.
The way things are now, everything's hopeless. You know that. With the paint formula cleared, we can be married.
Richard, I love you so much. I'd do anything for us. But this is...
Murder? Huh. Well, you needn't look at it that way, darling. So far as you're concerned, Ole will just disappear.
But suppose something goes wrong. Suppose you're convicted.
Not a chance. You can't convict a man for murder until you find the body. And they'll never find Ole. We must, Anna, we must.
Very well, Richard. When? When will you...
The moment Ole finishes the formula. It's almost ready now. I'll have to do it that instant to make my alibi hold. Today, tomorrow, soon, anyhow. Everything else is ready.
I love you above everything else in the world, Richard. I love you enough for even...
Have a peanut, friend? No. Oh, snoozing, huh? Traveling on trains makes some people sleepy. Not me. Been on trains all my life. Never get sleepy. Going far?
Satan's Point, Maine.
Satan's Point? Never heard of it. Must be a devil of a small place. What I said. Satan's Point. Devil of a small place. Good, huh? Have a peanut? Devil of a place. Devil of a place. Devil of a place.
Devil of a place it was that day. We went over every detail again and again until our story was perfect. A lot depended on the story we constructed. A lot depended on telling it well. I told it well. To the police in Maine and to the alienists in Boston. I started the story with the morning of October 11th in Ole's laboratory by the sea.
Hold on. This is my last mixture. It will be ready in a few minutes, and I want your eyes to be well rested.
Think you've got it this time, Ole?
No, there's no longer any doubt. When these pigments are mixed, I will paint a square board. It will look like a dirty green to my eyes.
And to mine?
To yours, and those of millions of others who are colorblind. Red. Red that you have only imagined till now. Red of the rose, red of a sunset. Red of fire, red of blood.
I put the blindfold on. I could sense Ole's tenseness. He'd worked 15 years to make this moment arrive.
Richard, from all I can see, a miracle is about to take place. But I confess to one great fear.
What's that, Ole?
I'm not afraid the formula is wrong. I'm afraid for you.
For me?
Yes. I have to warn you, Richard. I don't know. No one knows what mental reaction takes place when a person who's never seen color before suddenly does.
You mean that I could be affected?
You could be. You see, red excites even normal people. It vibrates in the brain. With you...
Let's have a look, Ole.
Now, Richard, when you take the blindfold off, look straight ahead of you. The board is right before your eyes. Look, Richard, and when you do, start talking right away. I want your immediate reaction.
Okay, here goes.
Look. See, Richard. Look, it's red. Look. Say something. Talk, Richard, talk.
Say something I couldn't. It's hard enough to recall the little that I do. I was staring straight ahead of me at a square board. Nothing happened for a brief instant. And then I caught my breath sharply. My eyes dried. They burned. I closed them, but the patch of exquisite color seared my brain. A single hot, flashing stab of pain pierced my head.
And then I felt a surging power, a physical power grip me. And Ole's voice reached me, jabbed at me. My whole being seemed to focus on his voice. I had to choke it off. I vividly recall reaching for him across something and finding his throat. And then nothing more. Nothing but the breaking of glass and a sensation of violent action. Motion and action that lasted long after the voice stopped. Then I felt cold air lashing at me. I was carrying something limp and heavy. There's a point of rock outside the house. It juts over the sea. I stood there for I don't know how long. The first clear thing I recall is identifying Anna's voice coming toward me.
Richard! Richard! Darling, what are you doing? Richard! Your hands! There's blood.
Something died in me. I sank to the ground, moaning. Anna, I'm afraid.
What do you suppose all this is, huh? Sounds like somebody got themselves murdered, doesn't it? Well, that was an appetizer for our next mystery entree. And that old master chef, the laughing boy of the inner sanctum, Raymond, is going to serve it up to you. Yes. Raymond's going to be here next time in company with his fellow creeps in another attempt to scare the living daylights out of you. So why not humor the old creep and be around when we open the squeaking door of the inner sanctum? This is Peter Lorre closing the doors of the Mystery Playhouse. Good night. Sleep tight. This is the Armed Forces Radio Service.
That's it for this week. We'll be back next week with more old-time radio. I hope you can join us then. Till then, this is Jim Dolan thanking you for listening. The RTC Weekly Download is produced by Chris Stone and Jim Dolan.